Let us go. What is the function of premotor? So what did I tell you? The function of premotor is planning. Okay. What do you see here in this picture? There is a planning involved here also. There is a planning involved in this also. But what is the difference here? Here the planning was done properly and the execution also must have been carried properly. Here the planning was not done properly, isn't it? The person has underestimated the weight that he is going to lift, and so the execution is wrong. It fails, right? So what is the function of your premotor? See, so what have we seen the premotor? Where exactly is my premotor? Where exactly is my premotor? If I have to draw, if this is my central sulcus, here is my primary motor area, and what is there? In front of the primary motor area is my premotor area, right? So if I have to say in the premotor areas also, this is my premotor area. Now this premotor area is involved. What is it? It is specially active when motor routines are run in response to visual or somatic sensory cues. Okay, like reaching out for the object. So let me tell you the story of this picture. What is happening? This girl, she knows where, she gets a visual clue that here is where the object is, and she plans to lift that object. So with her visual clue, she is sending the information to the premotor area. Premotor area does the planning, okay? And it sends the commands, or you can say the blueprint, to the primary motor area. And the primary motor area, via the descending tract, sends the information to the effectors, that is the muscles. So this girl, what is she doing? She is bending down, going to lift the stick, and she may stand up again. So what was all this started with? It all started with the visual clue, where she could know where her object is, and then she could plan it and execute it. How about this boy who is trying? He also look at this. Let us see what he did. He's coming. He got the visual clue. He's ready. He planned it, and he went on for execution. The only thing that went wrong was the execution. Otherwise, planning was fine enough, right? He underestimated himself and he went on for lifting a heavier load than his capacity. So your premotor areas, if I have to go still more, let me take a screen and show you the function of premotor area. What is it? Look here. It is specially active when motor routines are run, a normal activity or run in response to visual, where you are like trying to lift up any object, or you're simply taking to, you're standing there and you want to pick up a cup of coffee, or you want to do any of those smaller activities, routine activities. And it is in response to the visual or the somatosensory cues. Reaching to out an object in full view, or identifying out an object out of sight by manipulation. So it means that you got some sensation. Okay, you were walking, you got, somebody touched you. What do? You are not seeing that person, but you could feel that somebody has touched you at your back. So what you do? You just turn back and try to look at him. So you try to look at that part. So that is what it is saying, that identifying an object out of the sight by manipulation. Then comes the supplementary motor area. So we remember that. See, this is the supplementary motor area on the medial part of it, in front of the primary motor area. What is that so important about supplementary area is, just remember that supplementary motor areas are important for our primitive movements. What are these primitive movements? As if when you are trying to climb up with your two hands, a time was there when we were using our both the limbs for walking, we are not exactly what we are now. We took long years of evolution. So where we were using all our four limbs to walk, when we try to walk on a, we want to climb up, then also we use our four limbs. Then itching, scratching, you have seen the animals doing that. All that movements are your primitive movements. What are motor movements then? What are my modern movements? Your fine skilled movements. We didn't learn how to button our shirts. It was difficult at one time. Okay, now we have learned it. We didn't know how to draw initially. If I'm looking at still very early in the evolution, small primates, if you look at, they don't know how to draw. They don't know how to make a sketch. These all are, they don't know how to make skillful hand movements, dancing, all that movements. So those are your modern movements. But certain primitive movements, they are possible because of our supplementary motor areas. Now the question arises, what is it involved in? It is involved in planning. Again, it is planning. So along with the premotor areas, your supplementary motor areas are also involved in motor planning. But for them, you don't need the cues. You don't need cues which are outside, external cues, how we have seen in the premotor areas. You look at the, you use your visual cues. And with that visual cues, okay, this far is my object and this is what I need to make adjustment of my body. And this is how I'm going to pick up the object. Whereas in supplementary motor areas, the cues or the, stimulus is inside yourself, inside the body. That is, you make an intention. Suppose you make an intention of standing and moving your hand or dancing or doing anything. You make an intention, you plan before it. Suppose now only, I hope all of you are sitting, right? Suddenly, if I ask you, stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down. So if I ask you to stand up and sit down, you have to plan it. Exactly, your brain has to decide, make an intention of it, plan about it, tell different areas of the brain and be ready. This is how you be ready before you actually go for execution. How we have seen for racers who are running. How do they do that? They, they hear the start gun shot. Okay, one position, two, then third, they start running, isn't it? So you have to have an intention. That intention is going to give a stimulus, or you can say it instigates the supplementary motor areas to make a planning. This is how it is involved in motor planning. Now, pre-programming movement sequence that have already been built in the motor memory. So your supplementary motor areas, they are involved in pre-programming the movements which are already there in your motor memory, as I told you, in our primitive movements. Okay, so those movements of your hips, movements of your trunk, those are primitive motor movements. Now, they are also a part of the motor loop. We are going to learn what motor loop is. So they are a part of the motor loop which is passing through the basal ganglia. BG is basal ganglia. If there is any way a unilateral or bilateral lesion of this supplementary motor areas, this is associated with akinesia. So what is akinesia? There is loss of movement. Okay, so you can have a unilateral loss of movement, or you call it as a unilateral akinesia, or they can be bilateral loss of movement, which is called, it may be like total akinesia.